Okay, I know I don't have a lot of time, so usually I like to pace and walk the. I use my own. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, but my son's calculated the math. I have to go every slide 10 seconds, so it's going to go really fast. Okay, so just a quick question for people in the audience, because I was having a conversation yesterday at the reception party. Somebody was asking me, Jennifer was asking me, like, I might have lost my passion. How do I find it again? So my question to all of you is: are any of you at a crossroads? Can I get my slides up, please? I have slides, I swear. Okay, I'm just looking at myself here. And so anybody at crossroads, an inflection point in their life and their career? Anybody? Okay, I would assume many of you, because you're here for a reason, right? Thank you very much for raising your hand. There's this film, it's called Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow. Has anybody seen this film? Not a great film, but the story, the plot line is Gwyneth is catching a subway, and in one storyline she catches that her life stays the same. In a different storyline, she misses the subway, the door closes on her, and she goes back to her loft to find her boyfriend, I think, Viggo Mortensen, cheating on her with another woman. So these are two different stories, and I'm intrigued by the concept of the story, not the actual movie itself, because I wonder how many of you are on that train, living your life the way it was prescribed to you by someone else, thinking this is the way it was meant to be. But in the alternate reality, you missed the train, you didn't catch it because you didn't follow rules or you got up late, and you have a whole different life. Now, if I was Gwyneth Paltrow in the story, I would choose to miss the train because I don't want to live a lie. So these are some of the themes I want to explore with you. I was doing a little bit of research on our YouTube channel, and I was astonished to see this stat. I'm not here to humble brag on you, but in the 10-ish years in which we've been creating content, I was shocked to discover our lifetime earning is close to $1 million. It's pretty wild, right? Now, thank you. Now, I know a lot of people who make a lot more than that. Some make that just in a month. But for us, it's like to be able to make content, to do exactly what I want, to have no boss, and to say exactly what I want and do whatever it is I want, to live my own schedule, that's really remarkable. So my talk is called Confessions of a Recovering Graphic Designer. Basically, it's 20 plus years of not following directions, breaking rules, and just getting into a lot of side quest misadventures. And it's a story about me and hopefully you, by transference, finding your true passion and purpose in life. So Hal asked me to share my story, but I look at this as an opportunity to teach you a little bit about storytelling. It's what I used to do at art school. Okay, so maybe you guys get to follow along. You follow my story and you learn how to tell your story because it's really important. And the reason why stories are really important is a friend of mine, Vin Zhang. Does anybody know Vin Zhang? He lives in Australia. He's amazing, by the way. He's taller than me. He has more hair than me. He's really good looking. I hate him. But Vin has this post, and he says, why is it important for us to tell our story? The reason why it's important for us to tell our story is because sometimes we forget who we are. And the stories remind us of who we are. So whether you're living abroad or you've never left Vietnam, it's really important for you to understand your story. And I've had a problem with this myself. So what I want to do is share with you this idea of a story formula. Some of you know it. Some of you are going to learn it for the first time today. And there's some very basic principles of story formula. And all good stories follow a very strict formula. And the formula is something like this. Somebody wants something and can't get it. They go through a series of trials and tribulations, life challenges basically. Instead of getting what they want, they get what they need. And what they need is to learn this lesson. Oftentimes, the characters in the stories pursue an external gratification, like a beautiful boyfriend or girlfriend, a big house or a dream car, or to be popular. But what they need to do is to learn something much deeper inside of them, which is self-acceptance of love and forgiveness or something like that, okay? But that's a lot to remember, so I was able to reduce it down to just 3 components. Every good story has a character. That character is you. And characters have to be specific, not generic, so the more specific the character is, the more compelling it is because we get to see ourselves in that character. We relate with them in their struggles. And they have a want. And the most important part to this is, believe it or not, the obstacle. Because without the obstacle, life is just too smooth. Everything is perfect, and it's really boring. And we have suspicions about perfect people, that they're not real, that they're hiding something, and we don't trust them. And Robert McKee writes in his book, Story, that if you don't have conflict, then you don't have a story. So look for the conflict in your story, because it's not just a part of it, it's an essential part. Now, a very famous story written by William Shakespeare is Romeo and Juliet. And these are star-crossed lovers. They should be together. They were meant to be together in such deeply profound ways. But the problem is their two families hate each other, the Montagues and the Capulets. So Shakespeare invents a reason why they can't be together, and that's the whole source of the story and the tragedy. Without that conflict, there is no story. So conflict and adversity, your struggles, maybe you were raised by a single mom, maybe you were given up for adoption, maybe you've had to overcome some abuse as a child, or you didn't get into the perfect school, or you got into the perfect school but was ostracized, or you had to flee Vietnam for different reasons. Many of you guys can relate to that. Those are essential parts to your story. So there's two ways to look at your story, level 1 and level 2. Level 1 is what you do. Oftentimes people are too focused on what it is that you do. We're career-oriented, we want to achieve things, we want to attend a certain prestigious university, have a great title, or work for a certain company with a big tech name behind it. But if you want to get to the next part, which is level 2, which is to find the parts that make you meaningfully different. Different is better than better. Sally Hogshead said that. Different is better than better, okay? To be different. Those are themes I'll be exploring. Now, it's not that easy, I think, on paper, to figure out what makes you different. So we'll explore that together today. Okay, so I came across this Venn diagram, and there's 4 quadrants to it. The ideal part is to be right in the center, in this kind of flower-like formation. And the 4 components are things that you love, what you're passionate about, what gets you up every single day that no one has to pay you money to pursue and to do. The things that you do that you lose track of time. And then there's the skill, the things that you're good at, things that you have natural gifts for, the things that you're trained to do. And then there's reward, what pays well. So even if you're really good at things, if you don't find something that pays you well, that gives you a big reward, you're gonna have some challenges there. And lastly, it's needs. What does the world need? What is your higher calling, higher purpose? Okay, so if you have 1 quadrant, it's okay. 2, it's okay, but you need to try to find the overlap between all 4. So the problem here is if you love something and you're good at it and it doesn't pay well, will you be happy but poor? Anybody here feel happy and poor? Okay, it's a tricky economy, I see. I don't know how a Grab driver can make a living, for a ride for $1.50. I don't know how that works. Okay, and if you love something and it pays really well, but you don't have any skill or training at it, we would call that just a dream, a fantasy. My children are here, my 2 adult children are here, and one of them has all these dreams, but it's like, you gotta do the work, you gotta be good at it, right? So we know that. I won't say which one's that one. Okay, if you have skill and you do something that the world needs, but it doesn't pay well, we call that charity. Some of you are doing charity work, you don't know it. And the last one is if there's a great reward and the world needs it, but you don't love it and you're not good at it, it's just like you just chasing the next big thing. Like, crypto or AI or something that you don't really care about, but everybody's moving there, you're gonna live a soulless life. So we're trying to focus in on the center, right? So when everybody zigs, what you gotta do is zag. You gotta go a different direction, or maybe you gotta zog. Zog is like operating in your zone of genius. See what I did there? Zone of genius. The work that you were meant to do, the deep, powerful, compelling work that only you were meant to do. Okay? Okay. So I came across this quote from Picasso, and I love this quote. He says, the meaning of life is to find your gift. And gifts, the way gifts work is you have to give it away. There's no point to have a gift and to keep it for yourself. So then the purpose of life is to give it away. So it's 2 parts, right? What is your gift? What makes you different? What were you meant to do? The job you're most suited for, the job you're built for, and then to give that away in as generous way as possible. Okay, so that was a long way for me to get into my intro. As Hal has mentioned, the way he describes it sounds like I'm an internet scammer. I am not. I don't teach people how to make money on the internet. I teach people how to make money doing what they love without losing their soul. Slight differentiation. Thanks, Hal. You just brought it down. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, but I go by many titles. I'm a loud introvert, a recovering graphic designer, a serial entrepreneur, a middle child, a serial dreamer, an above-average student, but a first-class troublemaker, and a husband. But the title I care most about is the proud father of these 2 boys. They're a bit older now, and I just want to make sure I make a good impression on them. So I'm doing my best to have the max Riz game going. and to be zaddy. I'm trying, guys. But every time I use Gen Z language, they're like, Dad, don't be so cringe. Stop it. You're not allowed to use those words. But I'm hip like that. I'm 52, going to be 53 in a second. And my children are 21 and 18, so like, Dad, you just can't. You're being boomer right now. Just don't do it. But I'm going to do it anyways. So I've spent 25 years making images, making commercials and music videos for some of the biggest brands, bands, and ad agencies in the world. And at 42 years old, something crazy happened to me. My life was interrupted. Things completely changed. And I'm going to share that story with you in a little bit. Slide. And then everything changes and nothing's the same. It's a huge inflection point in my life. And the crazy thing about these inflection points is when you're presented with the opportunity, in the moment, it looks like an obstacle. It looks like a drain on you, that you're being tested. It never looks like an opportunity in the moment. I wish it did. Like, somebody knocked on the door and you're like, who's there? It's me, opportunity. I got good news for you. It never looks like that, right? And so that's what happened to me at 42. Okay, but I chose to open the door to welcome opportunity in, and my life completely changed. There's a photo of me, I think, with my son or my wife there, swimming with whale sharks in the Philippines, staying on a private island, and then going on a helicopter ride. All because I said yes. And instead of saying why, I said, why not? Why not me? Why couldn't this work, right? So hashtag I was like living the dream. And I am living that dream very much today. And how did I do this? Well, in order to tell you the story, I have to go back to the future. I just have a quick check-in. Am I talking at a speed that's okay? You guys okay? I'm feeling the timer on me right now. Okay, thank you. Okay. So Steve Jobs said in his very famous commencement speech at Stanford, I'm sure there's some Stanford grads here, that it's not possible to connect the dots looking forward, that you can only connect them looking backwards. That's why I need to go back to the future with you. So there's going to be many dots that won't add up, and hopefully by the end of this, I'll make all the dots connect for you, and maybe you can see yourself in my story or I'm in your story. I'm not sure which way it is. So we got to go back to the start, okay? So I was actually born in Saigon, but I have no memory because my parents fled Saigon in 1975, and we moved to all places, Kansas City, just because that's where our sponsors were. I think that's Aunt Barney in the middle there, the white lady between the two Asian people. That would be my mom and dad, and that's where we lived for a little bit. And my parents, by great fortune, landed of all places, America, so we can live the American dream, to get piece of that. And they formulated certain rules. And I think they worked for the time in which they lived in, which is if you work hard, you make sacrifices, and you get a great education, anything is possible. And in the time in which they were in America, they didn't even have a college education, which is pretty wild, because both of them wound up in big tech companies. My mom wound up becoming a designer drafter at IBM, and my dad wound up being a chief engineer at Applied Materials. Pretty cool for immigrants, right? So now I'm living with this pressure of high-achieving parents telling me what I need to be doing in my life. Okay, so as I mentioned before, I'm the middle child. Any middle children here? I think middle children are disappearing because now there's like 2 kids, okay, a couple. So you guys know what it's like, right? It's tough being a middle child. You're not the strong alpha one, and you're not the baby face one. You're kind of the forgotten child, and that was me. So I have to point out because sometimes like, which one are you, bro? I'm the one with my eyes closed. That's me. That's right. Collars popping, though, I just want to say. Okay. My older brother, let me go back one slide here, is 4 years older than me. And he is, in a weird way, a surrogate father to me. My dad was working all the time. In America, we call that latchkey kids. Basically, your parents go to work, and you don't see them until dinner time. So basically, you take care of yourself. And my older brother looked out for me, and he saw something in me before I even could see it in myself. He saw a little twinkle of a person who was a creative person who had these ambitions but didn't know where to go. So he really looked out for me. So my older brother gives me this book. It's written by John Fitzgerald about the fictional character Tom, the Great Brain. Okay, it's set in like early 1900s in Utah, and the Great Brain is a con man. I think he's 15 years old, and the story's told from the perspective of his younger brother, how he's always cheating kids out of money. So my older brother gives me this book to read, and I love it. So I'm reading book after book, and it gets into my mind. He puts this little kernel of an idea that I could be an entrepreneur. I don't want to cheat kids out of their money, but there's something beautiful about this idea of being an entrepreneur. And Tom had great ideas. And so literally I read the book as if it was a manual on how to live life. And you'll see this in a second, okay? And there's this concept of arbitrage, which basically just means to buy low and to sell high, right? That's the core of entrepreneurship or capitalism. And I love going fishing. I grew up near a creek, and so we'd always go crayfishing. And I thought, here's a brilliant idea. I'll catch crayfish, and I'll go sell it to people who want crayfish. Well, unfortunately, all my relatives are like, you can't sell it to us. We're going to take the crayfish. It's problematic. And I forgot one thing. I'm really shy, and I hate sales, so I didn't sell any crayfish at all. I forgot about that. So my next big idea, many, many years later, it was hot outside. I was thinking, man, you know what people like on a hot day? Like here, a cold, refreshing beverage or a popsicle. So I would run home after school, load up a duffel bag full of popsicles, and I would run back to my younger brother's school and trying to sell the popsicles. There was a problem with that. It was logistics. Hot day, warm bag, popsicles. Basically, I sold 5 popsicles, and the rest was a slush, sticky mess. That idea did not work. So I think I needed a more durable thing that's not so temperature sensitive. And my uncle owned a liquor store, so I had an ability pre-Costco to buy wholesale candy. And I love this. So I talked to my cousin, hey, I'm going to put my order in, do it, and get it. There's just a couple of problems. My cousin wasn't super reliable in getting me the goods. So I would sell them, and then there was to be this gap. Sell it, and there's a gap. So logistics and managing people was a really tough thing. So I needed to figure out something else, something bigger, something with higher profit margin too, because candy you can only sell so much. And growing up, my uncle used to take us to Grindhouse films, which is like $1 and you can watch a Hong Kong action film. So I love watching Bruce Lee, mixed martial arts, and I was like reading Inside Kung Fu. And in the back cover was an ad for the Asian world of martial arts. Okay, so here I am in California, in San Jose. I was like, this looks really cool. And I ordered them thinking, I wonder if I can get these. So I would buy nunchucks and ninja stars. And I was like, this is really cool. And then I remembered, that's what the great brain did. He bought things that no one can get, and he sold them for like 5, 10x. This is awesome. So I'm in junior high at John Steinbeck Middle School, and I started selling ninja stars to kids at school and butterfly knives. Okay, we almost got expelled out of school for doing that. So I learned a very important lesson: don't do illegal things. So the problem here is I've been going from one failure to the next, and I found this quote from Winston Churchill that success consists of going from failure to failure without the loss of enthusiasm. I needed to find my next thing, my next big entrepreneurial idea. But I knew this was for me. I was not a 9-to-5 person. I needed to make something. So this is part 2 of my story about how I'm a weirdo, okay? One of the biggest problems with being a person who's a refugee immigrant is I never felt like I belonged anywhere. So where we went and where we lived, I was mostly around white people. And in some instances, I was the first Asian person anybody ever seen, which is really weird. It does a lot to your self-identity. And to top it off, I was a skinny, small kid. Maybe I still am by some standards. I wasn't into sports. I didn't like cars. I wasn't interested in anything cool. And that's really problematic. The thing that I wanted for my birthday was the Easy Bake Oven. And my brother quickly told me, there's some gender problems here. This is not for boys. He kind of just broke my dream. I wanted that because I thought I could bake cookies and sell the cookies. Legal, and I could control the supply. I never got one, though. And I was really into Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, this is not like girlfriend material. This is like super geeky. Now it's cool. Back then, not cool at all. You kind of have to play Dungeons and Dragons in secret. I spent a lot of time at the arcade, back when it was just 25 cents to spend to play a game. And this was considered by many people just a waste of freaking time. So my mom sees that I like the outdoors, and so my children want me to share the story because it's so painful to share, and they love it when I'm just in pain. And my mom enrolls me in the Cub Scouts. So one day I come home, and I'm like, who's this white man? She goes, that's the Cub Scout master. I'm like, why is he here? Well, I've enrolled you, without even asking if I wanted to be part of Cub Scouts. I'm like, okay, I like camping, let's go do this. And so my mom has this genius idea, because my mom is like a very talented woman. She paints, she draws with chalk and pastel and oil. She's very talented, self-taught. In a different world, I think she would have been a world-class artist, and she knew how to sew. So my mom takes a look at the uniform cost, which I think is like $32. She decides she's just gonna make it for me. Just by looking at it one time, my mom, the genius, she should be on Project Runway because she makes me my Cub Scout uniform of a different material and a different cut, and it's not exactly the same. And if you're a kid, all you want to do is just blend in. Sure, I show up to this troop, which was supposed to be my place to find my brothers. I'm feeling even weirder now than before. Hashtag not helping at all with fitting in and belonging. I love reading Sunset Magazine. I know it's really weird. And I would sit there and look through the spreads and see how people lived and just dreamed of this ultimate California lifestyle. And I looked around our house like, why are our walls white? Why is our carpeting blue? And who put up these drapes? We need to do something about this situation. That was me. So you can see it's like that square peg in the round hole. And that's one of the reasons why I think the Apple campaign, which borrowed Jack Kerouac's poem, Here's to the Crazy Ones, the Misfits, the Rebels, the Troublemakers, sang to my soul, because that was just me. Just out of curiosity, does anybody here feel like they don't belong anywhere, no matter where you go? I feel you. I really do. I've really struggled with this. I'm okay with it now, but I've really struggled with this. So I would escape in the world of my imagination, watching movies and just disappearing and obsessing over them, actually, and into the world of comic books and just the amazing panel artwork and the lettering and even the notes on the comic books themselves. I was just like fascinated by these things. And I read comic book after comic book, not serious literature, but things made for kids. I even love the ads. There's a theme here. I even love the ads in the back of the comic books. So cool. So my heroes were people like Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and John Buscema, Frank Miller, Mike Zeck, and John Romita Jr. If you know, you know. Is that what the kids say? If you know, you know? No? Okay, he's like, whatever. So I've developed a lot of unhealthy obsessions. And I'm into subculture, skateboarding, and I'm just fascinated by this world. Mostly not because of the extreme sports nature of it, mostly because of the graphics. I'm just mesmerized by the way that these are composed and who the characters are in the stories. I've gone back now. I probably own close to 50 or 60 skateboards, but I've gone back to relive my childhood through these skateboards. And so the graphics, the iconography were just so cool to me. I didn't know there was such a thing called graphic design back then. Now I do, but these are just like the things I grew up with. And then I got into this thing called the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Is anybody a fan of MMA? Yeah? Okay. So I am what my brother calls like a dolphin. I'm a deep diver. When I get into something, I just lose myself in that thing. I just forget everything. So I was a little late to the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So I went on eBay and looked for VHS tapes. And I bought UFC 1 to 20 because I missed those pay-per-views. But since then, I think I bought the UFC pay-per-view up into UFC 200, every single pay-per-view. Part 3. I think I'm doing okay on time. Let me just check the slide number. Okay, we're doing pretty good. 94 out of 247. Okay. I told you, I gotta go really fast. I'm keeping it real with you guys. Thanks, Jaden. Thank you. So this is my dad's rule, right? Do what makes you happy, follow your dreams, listen to your heart. I told my dad I want to go to art school, and he goes, no, it's pronounced Stanford. He did not say, listen to your heart, follow your dreams. He said, do a respectable thing that's consistent, that pays well, that takes no risk. That's my dad. And for a long time, I didn't understand my dad. But when I went to therapy, I understood that when you are a refugee and you lose everything, your people, your culture, your country, your home, your relatives, risk is not something you become a fan of. Once I understood that, it gave me a greater appreciation for my dad and his story and what he went through. So the plan for me was to study hard, to excel at school, stay away from girls, which I did, not by choice, to go to a good university, and to have a long, safe career. That was my dad's plan. That was the plan, right? A to Z, it works out. Anybody follow the plan and do well? I'm just curious. Lawyers, accountants, engineers, you raise your hand, but you're like, no, not today. No, something else? Pharmacists? I don't know. Okay, I don't know. Okay, so there was the plan. Get straight A's, do really well in SATs, which my brother did well. My brother, who's 4 years older, the alpha, he went to Stanford, got his graduate degree in software engineering, and he exited out of multiple tech companies. A little pressure. Middle child, And that was just like the hashtag immigrant parent dream, right? And that's very common. My problem was I was an above average student. My GPA was about 3.85 in high school, and that was not good enough. So there's an Asian joker. We're all Asian, so I'm just going to say it. B's make honey, A's make money, and I didn't get enough A's, unfortunately. Okay? And for some of you who live in America, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. There's this disparity of culture, like Asian culture, or immigrant culture, I should say, and then American culture, just to share with you. My buddy Chad, he told me what he got in his report card, and he got a bunch of C's. Like his average was a C, which is an average grade. He's telling me how his dad was buying him a BMX bike. Like, damn, a C and you get a BMX bike? I was scared. If I got a C, it meant I can't come home. They're just different levels, right? Oh my God. I was like, I actually got one C in my life, and I had to forge it and change it to a B. But I gave myself a B+ to make it look real, Okay, so I didn't follow the plan for sure. I was just all over the place. The plan was to take AP classes and to join debate and student government and join prestigious clubs. My plan was to take home economics, woodshop, commercial art, join the yearbook staff, and do metal shop. Perfect, loser material. And college, I set my sights on UCLA, to Cal Poly, and to UCSD, where my brother got his undergrad degree. And I was rejected out of all three. Super sad. And the letter that I got was even sadder, you show a lot of potential, you're just not ready. And that kind of hurt me a little bit. I was like, well, I'll show you one day. You bastards, how dare you fucking refuse me? It was true though, I wouldn't have accepted me either. I was just really unfocused. And then my high school yearbook teacher, Mike DeVita, he said, Chris, you think about pursuing a career in design? I was like, no. Poor people pursue design. I want to be rich. This is stupid. I was really interested in comic book arts though, but I lacked the skill and the discipline, so that didn't go anywhere. So it's just my future was just not very clear. Until I met Rudy, Brad, and Dean. These are three people who are interconnected that changed my life. So Rudy is my younger brother's high school wrestling coach. And for some reason, he found out I was really into illustration. And he says, hey, does your brother want to work for a silk screen shop? My buddy Brad owns it. And I got that job. Now, for context, I was working low-skill labor jobs, working at a fast food place, dropping fries, come home every day with my face full of grease. I didn't need the help with the grease. And I was paid $3.50, I believe, an hour, which is minimum wage, and I hated that. I was thinking, the human mind is capable of doing much more than this, than dropping fries into a bag and saying, would you like fries with that? So Brad represented this whole other future. I got hired as a production artist, and I was making $18 an hour. I was like, this is it. I found something. And I was just inking over Brad's drawings, a traditionally trained graphic designer. But so fate would happen that Brad sent me on an errand to pick up some typesetting. This is in the early days of desktop publishing. So I drove over to Dean's house, and I see this white man living in a single-story suburban kind of tract home. He comes out in his Hawaiian shirt. This is not Dean, obviously. It's AI generated. And he comes out with his shorts and flip-flops. He's like, who are you? I'm like, Brad sent me to pick up something. He goes, well, you're early, but you want to wait inside. I'm like, yes. So I walk down the hallway, shag carpet, it's kind of the 80s, or late 80s. I walk down, and then I enter into his home office. A concept I didn't even understand back then. And when I walked through that and I stepped in there, it was like a magical place. It was probably 12 feet by 12 feet. It had this gray, beige Macintosh and a giant laser printer, and he used a computer to design. And I looked at all of his markers and his art supplies and the packages he was designing. I was like, what is this? He said, what do you mean? What is this? That's what I do for a living? Like, what other things do you do for a living? Just this? He goes, yes. Are you married? He goes, yes. Do you have kids? He goes, yes. So you could make a living doing graphic design. I lied to myself. So at that point, I knew from that point forward, I was going to be a graphic designer. So I go back and I tell Brad, I'm going to be a graphic designer. And Brad says, okay, where are you going to go to school? I said, I don't know. I didn't get into any of those schools. I didn't get into any of them. He goes, you know where you need to go? You need to go to Art Center. I was like, what's the real name of the school? Art Center. Where is it? He's like, LA. And he goes, there are cocky bastards just like you there. You'll fit right in. So I go home that day and tell my mom, I'm going to Art Center. She's like, what? I'm going to go to Art Center. That's where I'm going to go. Where is it? I don't know. It's in LA somewhere. She goes, okay. So here's the thing. You don't get to university, you got to go to community college. So community college was the last hope, salvation. For Asian parents, it's purgatory. It's like where kids go to lose their soul and they become a mechanic or something. So I go to San Diego City College because that's where my brother's at. And I start working on my portfolio. But I was still this immature, unfocused high school student who had bad habits, who would procrastinate, who would wait till Sunday night to do homework that was due Monday morning. That was me. And so doing so for about a year broke my mom's heart because she was like, you didn't get into college, you're going to go to art school, you're living with your brother, but you're so unfocused that he's telling me this kid is not going to do anything. Now remember, my older brother is the guy who's the champion for me. He's telling my mom, I'm going to be a loser. So I have these tearful conversations with my mom, like, she's like, give up on this dream, come home, do something different in your life. And on top of that, I'm having a horrible breakup with my girlfriend at the time, the woman that I loved, who I thought I was going to marry and have children with. Her name's Christine, her real name. And I go through this dark night of the soul because I found out like we're breaking up and things aren't working out. And so now things aren't working out with my brother. My mom's saying give up on the dream. And of all the people in the world that never give up on you, you never think it's going to be mom who doesn't believe in the dream anymore. So I was torn apart. That night, I laid on the floor next to the futon, crying my eyes out in the fetal position, and I had this outer body experience. My brain starts to float above me, kind of looking back on myself, and I start to say, like, wow, you're such a freaking loser. You can't do anything right. And I knew in that moment, I had a big decision. I was at an inflection point at that moment. Am I going to fulfill what they say to be true, that I'll never do anything with my life, or am I going to make a change? So that night I tell my friends, that's the day that the boy died and the man emerged, because I knew then I needed to be a graphic designer. I was going to prove everybody wrong. I don't care what it takes. I'm committed to this dream. So I get really focused and I start doing the work. And luckily I'm guided by two teachers at City College. Shout out to Charles LaGreca and Candace Lopez, who guide me through this process. In a matter of months, I put my portfolio together and I get accepted into Art Center. And everyone is shocked. And not only that, I even got a scholarship. So I'm now at the place where I see people for the very first time in my life, people just like me. And I feel I'm home, and it feels good. Now, they don't look anything like me. I think there's one other Vietnamese person there, an older classman, an upperclassman, and she was Vietnamese. And there's 1,200 students, so there's 2 Vietnamese people at this whole school. Everyone else was white, or from America or European. There were a couple of Japanese students then, and that was it. Maybe some Taiwanese students, I should mention. There was at least one. I married her, by the way, so. This is where I learned that, in life, you're going to get pushed back, you're going to get rejected in all ways, informal and formally, like from schools and from people saying no to you. The no is, if we reframe the word no, it's an abbreviation. It just means next opportunity. This one wasn't right. What's the next opportunity? Just like in pursuing business as a kid, I was like, no. Well, what's the next opportunity? I needed to find it. So a lot of times when you hear no, it just means this wasn't right for you right now. And if you believe in it enough, you can push through the adversity and you can have a breakthrough moment for yourself. Okay, part 4, I'm almost done here. Dumb luck. So I'm at Art Center, I'm about to graduate, and I get a call from school, senior year, that Adobe has a purchase After Effects from COSA. So this is like After Effects version 1 or something like that. And they need to show some student work, and your teacher, Linda, has suggested that you submit your work. I'm like, ugh, I don't want to do this, whatever. I agreed to do it, and they pay you $1 for your work. I was like, what an insult. And back then I was like, why would they pay you $1? I didn't understand, because it makes it legal. They have to pay you something so they can own the rights to show this work. So I give them my work, I sign the contract, go to school, sign the contract. And I didn't know this, but this disc goes out all over the world. It becomes one of my most important marketing pieces, self-promotion, that I even know about because I'm stupid. So this is a quote from Guy Kawasaki. I think sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. I was just more lucky than smart at that moment. And because that disc went out, I got opportunities. And in 1995, this was when I started my own company called Blind. And that disc reaches people like David Newberger, Ian Dawson, and Gary Brees, some of which I've known for decades and I still remain in contact with. Some I've worked with, some have worked for me. So it's interesting how like a little something that you don't think is going to turn into anything can blossom into something much, much bigger. And then I wind up meeting people and working with RGA, which is world famous for doing motion effects, visual effects, and graphic design. And I start making things like this for Partnership for Drug-Free America, an anti-meth campaign. I got to do a project for Arnold Schwarzenegger for the Eraser main titles with Kyle Cooper. So I'm running along, company's going all right. And one late Friday afternoon, we get a call from this guy, his name's Robert Howells, and he has this idea for a music video. He goes, there's this song, and I want to base the entire visual concept based on a Rorschach test, which is a test that psychologists give you to see like what you're thinking about. So somebody might see a butterfly, somebody might see a landscape, or two people killing themselves, I don't know, right? And my producer at that time is like, Chris, they only have like $19,000. We have less than a week to produce the music video. It's Friday night, bro. What do you want to do? We can't do this job. I'm going to say no. I read the treatment from Robert Howells, and I said, his name is Tino. I said, Tino, if you don't find a way to get people to do this job, when we see this produced by someone else, you'll regret it. I know this is a good concept. He gets on the phone, he starts dialing, he starts calling everybody, he's like, okay, I have a team, we're going to do this. And so for about a week, we jam on this project. Can you guys guess what project this is? It's for a band called Gnarls Barkley, which is a collaboration between Danger Mouse, who's on the left, and CeeLo Green, who is a judge for The Voice in America. And this song, Crazy, becomes like record-breaking. And it sets many trends for people. And it wins an MTV Video Music Award. This is the first #1 single in the UK that was digital download. And now the video, as of 2024, has 311 million views. Not bad. So that project led to us working with Robert Howells on many other things, including an Australian band called Jet. So we wound up doing 3 or 4 music videos with him for Jet. And wound up doing a music video with him for an artist named Justin Timberlake. And then we started doing our own music videos. This one was for Cinematic Orchestra. And here's the cool thing about this music video. It inspired many other people to call us. So Audi sees the Rorschach test many years later and says, we have this new car. It looks really cool. It's a sportback. It's a coupe. It's for the A7. So they asked us if we could do treatment for it. So we wound up helping Audi launch the global launch for the Audi A7. So there are certain things that lead to something. You see the themes again, like when Friday night somebody calls, you can't do it, and you find a way, and then it has this ripple effect. What can happen? So we wound up doing a project with J.K. Rowling, the person who wrote Harry Potter, directing videos and campaigns for, I think this is for Oppenheimer funds, for Nat Geo, and then being featured in design annuals and magazines. And I got my first opportunity to direct a documentary film, which I got to travel across Asia to do this. I'd never directed any long-form content before. These are some stills from that. And while we were in China touring and doing a little public speaking, I asked somebody there in Guangzhou, what do I need to do to be big in China? Because there are a lot of opportunities there. Who do I need to work with? So my friend, he told me basically whenever you want to break into the industry, shoot for the highest celebrity client that you can, because everyone underneath will work with you because you have the cachet. So I asked him, who's big in China? And she said, oh, yeah, I just work with Beyonce, no problem. I'm like, cool. I said, hey, throw me a bone here. Is there anybody else we could work with? And she's like, Coldplay? I'm like, okay, no problem. Beyonce, Coldplay, right? So here's the story. Tobin, my executive producer who was touring with me, we're on the airplane, and I said, hey, Tobin, get somebody from Beyonce's team or Coldplay's team. I want to work with them. In fact, I remember months ago that they had reached out about something, but it didn't work for us. So he's like, okay. So for weeks, he would just call and email and call and email. And eventually, we got to do a music video for Coldplay. And it was the first interactive music video for Coldplay. They're really interested in new ideas and pushing boundaries. And this is the music video here. I wound up directing it. And there's Chris Martin, just to prove it to you. And that's me if you can't tell. A little bit younger, though. Okay, so the hashtag, do you believe in magic? That if you set the tone and intention in your life, that the world conspires to give it to you. But you have to be 1,000% committed, dedicated to that vision of what it is that you want. Right? You have to be willing to ask and to speak it to the universe because it will conspire to help you. Okay, we're almost done. This is part 5. This is the last part, the 2 J's. So I had mentioned to you before, like from about 1995 to about 2014, I ran a company called Blind, which made commercials and music videos. And I thought this was my life's work, but I felt something missing in my gut. So I started teaching in 2000. So I taught for almost 15 years at private art schools, at Art Center and Otis College of Design. The problem is when you're a teacher, at least in America, they don't pay you very much money. So I was making less money as a teacher than I was paying freelancers who were working for me, which felt kind of insulting. That didn't feel right. And that's me, by the way. I really get into it with my students. And I would work on storyboarding and concept and storytelling, sequential design. And one of my favorite things to do was to bring my wife. That's my wife. Her name is Jessie. And I would invite her to come to school with me because unlike the students, my wife is not afraid of me. So when I would get in the car with her after school, I'm like, honey, what do you think? She would give me feedback. Most of it was great, except for this one time. So, this is a sample from the classwork. So, you guys know this concept of the critique sandwich? It's a very European, Western concept. They don't know about this thing in Asia, let me just tell you, okay? A critique sandwich goes something like this, right? So the sandwich, so you say something nice, right? And then, there's a thin slice of truth in the middle of the niceness. And then there's lettuce and tomato, and just all very nice, and you end it on something very nice. I know y'all don't know what this is. If you grew up in Asia, you're like, what the hell? It's just all meat. Well, my wife is Taiwanese. She don't know about the critique sandwich, so she just hits it right in your face. You know how like when you come and see your aunties or your uncles and like you're fat, you're like, how about hello, how are you? Or why are you single? They just say it. There's no bread in there. Okay? So we're driving home, and I'm eagerly waiting for her to give me the good feedback, right? Like, I like this, I like that, I don't like this. She just said something, and there's a dispute as to what was said in the car that night, but here's how I remember it. And since I have the microphone, I get to tell it. What I heard her say was, honey, do you get tired of teaching the same thing? Like, I don't teach the same thing. It changes all the time. Well, do you feel like you're living up to your potential? Don't you think you could do more with your life? I was like, damn, girl. And I felt really attacked because I love teaching so much. I don't even get paid to teach, really. And I was like, how could you steal this from me right now? And the reason why I hurt so much and why I was so insulted, because she was right. And I'm a man, I can't admit that she's right. I'm like, God, this is boiling over in my brain right now. Like, what is wrong? So I go through the 5 stages of grieving. I go with denial and isolation. I'm angry about it. I was like, don't you think no. Depression, and then finally acceptance. It was a long, quiet ride from Pasadena to Santa Monica. The problem with her suggestion or her observation was she didn't have the answer. She just brought the problem to me. which is you could do more than this. Like you have a gift for teaching and a passion for it, but there's got to be another way. This enters the second J. The first J is Jesse. The second J is Jose. And he's this loud Puerto Rican extroverted guy. And we reconnect in about, 2013. And he tells me, Chris, I can help you make what you want to make. I can help you teach, but we have to do something. We have to get on YouTube. And I told him, there's no way I'm going to get on YouTube. There's just no way. I don't want to do it. I don't know what to say. No one will care. I get really self-conscious. This is not for me. And Jose did something really beautiful, something that I wish you all had somebody in your life who would do this for you at least one time in your life. He made it impossible for me to say no on my terms, which is pretty cool. Like there's no, like you must do it with a gun to your head. But he said no, like you got to do this. I would not do this without you. And I'll tell you what, you don't have to say anything at all. We'll roll the camera and you just sit there. And you could be silent the entire time. I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce you, I'll introduce the subject, and I'll do all the talking. If you know Jose, he can do that. I'm just a prop, so it's cool. I sit at the table, and for most of the episode, I probably say 10 words. Like, wow, that was really painful. He's like, we're going to do this again tomorrow. And so we keep doing this over and over again, and eventually we get good at this. And that's us. That's episode 1 right there of this school, and that's Jose. So we're on YouTube, we're doing things. And in 2016, Jose and I have different visions for the YouTube channel. So we go our separate ways. Still are friends, still care about him. And then I make this video. How much do you charge for a logo? And this is the video that goes thermonuclear. Our videos would get like 1,000, 5,000 views. This thing got tens of thousands, and ultimately now it has, I think, 4 million views. And the weird thing about this video is every version of this video works. We did a cut down. That thing has, I think, over 20 million views. And we reframed the cut down. The same cut down, just made it bigger. That thing has 10 million views. So I was like, this is really weird because I'm teaching creative people how to make money doing what they love. I was thinking no one would watch this video. And it turns out to be the catalyst for many other videos. And I get to interview and talk to people I admire from afar. And they're calling me up saying, can I be on the channel? This is really cool. Things are starting to happen. And then I get invited to do public speaking. So I'm traveling the world. I'm doing my thing, feeling great. I even get to work with high school students. So here's me trying to put a bow on it to wrap this up. So you remember how I talked to you, I was like really into subculture, into skateboarding? But it didn't go anywhere because I was not very good, mostly into the graphics, which I know you're not supposed to be about. Well, there's this series of videos that were like really groundbreaking, directed by Stacy Peralta. If you were a skateboarder in the 80s, you know what I'm talking about. One called Ban This and one called Public Domain. And this gentleman is the director. He's a former pro skater. His name is Stacy Peralta. And he was the co-founder of Powell Peralta, one of the 2 biggest skate companies in the world. And I get to meet him. And we wound up doing the main title and interstitial graphics for his first film, Dogtown and Z-Boys. And we wound up doing more films with him, Riding Giants, Made in America. You know, I was talking about like comics, like how I was really into comics but wasn't really that good. What I didn't realize at the time was my obsession with the panels were instrumental in me becoming a director, because a storyboard is a panel from a comic book. So although I was never taught how to do storyboarding, I've actually been learning the entire time. That wasted time is not so wasted anymore. So you'll see here, this is a storyboard for a spec video we did for Mini Cooper, and you can see how much it references this high contrast art that was kind of like pioneered by Frank Miller. So drawing inspiration from different fields of art, bringing it into motion, into cinema, created something that was interesting and different that stood out. These are actually my drawings for a music video that we directed. And you can see the references there. There was this main title for the island of Dr. Moreau where this scientist experimented on splicing. 2 minutes? Okay, we're good. Those are the friends from the island of Dr. Moreau. Wound up doing this. And this video is the one that actually helped me to get an Emmy. That's me right there. Love of comics and animation allowed us to work with Anime Expo, designing their branding. This is a project for Nissan, drawing from the same inspiration. I mentioned MMA before. We wound up doing 3 seasons, I think, of the title design or promos for The Ultimate Fighter and working with the FX network. The thing for video games, we wound up working with EA, Sony PlayStation, and one of the coolest projects we ever got to work on was for Xbox. And these are the CGI stills from the video that we produced from. This was at E3. So here are my final thoughts. I'm landing the plane. Thanks, Hal. I think making money is great, especially in a place where there aren't a lot of opportunities. It's really important, but I think making a difference is better. First half of my life was about making money. The second half is about making a difference in the world. And my success formula, and I hope that you'll take this away from this talk, is that money is the byproduct of impact. The more impact you make in the world, the more money you will receive. So pursuing money for the sake of money, I think, is a hollow endeavor. The question is, how will you measure your life? I came upon this video from Jason Silva, and he says, the billionaires of the 21st century will not be measured about in the amount of zeros they have in their bank account, but the number of lives positively impacted. And on that, I want to be a billionaire as well. So my final story is, there's a guy named Frank Shi, who I was a former student. I was teaching him. And this video goes really well, and people started making the comment, hashtag 10%. Chris makes videos for free. If you make money, send him 10% of whatever it is that you make. Seems like a pretty good deal. It's like church. Just give me whatever you want. So there's this young man on Twitter. He sends me a message, and he says, Chris, has anybody ever given you that 10%? I said, no. And he says, I will be the first person to send you a check for 10%. I'm like, dope, I like you. And then he sends me another message. He says, the amount is so small, I'm embarrassed to send it to you. I'm like, it doesn't matter how small it is. So one day, I get this envelope. It looks like a kid wrote it. I'm like, what the hell is this? I rip it open, and I look inside, and to his word, he sends me a check for $12.50. I was so excited. I come home, we're at the dinner table, and my wife's a crier. She cries at everything. She says, honey, and I'm cruel, so I'm like, do you want to cry? She goes, why? I'm like, just check this out. I slide the envelope across the table, and she's looking at it. It's like, why are you giving me this? She looks at it, it's like, and she looks at me like with disappointment. She's like, honey, you can't take this check. For a kid to give you 10% of what he made $120. You send that check back. I can't send it back. Do you know how insulting it would be for that kid who sent me the check? And I said, I can't take your check because it's too small. And then she says, oh my God. And then her eyes started to well up, and it got really red, and just like tears were streaming down her face, like a fountain you just turn on. I'm like, what's wrong? She goes, did you see the memo? I'm like, what do you mean the memo? And at the bottom, you know how you like write a memo for what it is? And he said, it's for what? And he wrote, for a better life. And that's the mission that I'm on, to teach people to make a living doing what they love. So in conclusion, before I get out of here, to find your gift, realize you are the gift. You don't have to do anything different. You just have to be you. And the more you are, the more you are. And I believe in that. So leaning in on that. So this is what my Venn diagram looks like. It took me, 2 decades of my life to find it. Once I found it, I just am so filled with purpose. My soul's on fire. And I don't need any kind of adrenaline or caffeine to get me up in bed, because I know what I'm doing is important and it's making a difference in the world. So the final thought is just be the you can be. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.